I am sure that you will agree that one of the most frustrating parts of life today is how many people are wrong. I mean, so many people are wrong. They're wrong about the vaccine, they're wrong about just like so much about COVID, they're wrong about immigrants, they're wrong about what's needed in schools, they're wrong about racism and climate change, they're wrong about gender, they're definitely wrong about God and church and what it means to live a good life. None of you, of course, which is good because being wrong is awful, right? It's embarrassing and uncomfortable. It makes us feel deficient. Luckily, in my household, we have two teenagers, so they help us get used to the feeling. Carrie and I are wrong literally all the time. In her 2011 TED Talk, Catherine Schultz asked us to reflect on the last time that we were wrong. So I invite you to do that now. Think about a time that you were wrong. Just connect in with that experience. Even if you have a helpful teenager around, you probably still, as you recall it, feel your face flush, your stomach tighten, because being wrong it really isn't a pleasurable experience, to say the least. Except, like Schultz reminds us, that isn't what it feels like to be wrong. That's what it feels like to realize that you are wrong. Because when you're wrong, but you don't realize it, it feels exactly the same as it feels to be right. Being wrong, but not realizing it, it actually feels great. It feels purposeful and clear and confident, often too confident. That is the thing about humans. Once we get a sense that an idea is right, then we find all sorts of evidence that supports it, not the other way around, like you might hope. We get an idea and then we go find evidence to support that idea. Behavioral economist Daniel Kahneman describes this overconfidence as a failure of imagination. When you cannot imagine an alternative to your belief, then you become convinced that your belief is true. That is overconfidence. Kahneman believes that humans become overconfident because we rely too much on what he calls fast thinking. So, like, I'm going to pull up this photo. Okay, so as you're looking at this photo, what story are you creating? What do you imagine that this person is about to do? This thinking that you're doing as you're just looking at this photo, it just happens. You don't have to work at it. It just uses patterns and mental modes, that is heuristics, to make quick automatic assessments. These mental models are useful and efficient and protective. For example, like if you were being chased by a wild beast in prehistoric times, then you wouldn't need to assess if you should run or not, because that just fits the mental model of wild beast, run. You just start running. Fast thinking is useful and protective and adaptive, and also it is often wrong. For more reliable thinking, we need to go slow. It's like the thinking that you would need for the math problem 17 times 24. So just now, if you aren't just right now pulling out your phone and instead you try to answer this calculation, your process is likely deliberate and orderly and slow. Slow thinking includes everything from this math problem to parking in a narrow space, unless, of course, you do either of these all the time for your job, in which case it might be able to be done by fast thinking. Slow thinking is the thinking that isn't automatic. It is conscious, intentional, and careful. And slow thinking is how we think all of our thinking happens. We believe that we make decisions not based on those shortcuts, those mental models and heuristics. We don't think that base our decisions on feelings or cultural assumptions or our upbringing. Definitely not because it's just what our friends think. We believe that each time we engage in a complex analysis of logic and reasoning, we study, we independently, rationally decide. But actually, the majority of the time, we are fast thinkers, especially right now as we enter this third year of a global pandemic. In this stressful and anxiety producing, this literally dangerous time, we turn over and over to impulse and automatic thinking to guide our choices, except because we believe that we are slow thinking our way through most things, we are all likely overconfident. And not just in terms of the big headline issues I started with. I just wanted to start there because I think those are each topics, areas where we don't think we are wrong, and where people who think exactly the opposite of us just as strongly believe that they are not wrong. And I think it helps to remember that being wrong feels exactly the same as being right. It helps, when we are trying to navigate our common world together, inescapably interdependent as we are. But what I've realized is that for as hard as these big headline disagreements are, what really derails us are the smaller, more interpersonal ways that we are wrong and don't realize it. I mean, the ways that we hurt and betray each other. I mean, the lies of omission and the failure to show up for each other, the failure to be curious about another, the ways we take each other for granted. I mean, the conflict avoidance that over time just becomes avoidance, and the resentment that we let build. I mean, that one dinner party where we all drank too much and the bitterness that just took over, and I mean the drinking too much. We are wrong every day in regular, predictable, and often devastating ways. We are wrong with our bodies and our words. We are wrong with our time and our money. We're wrong with our jokes and our silence. Sometimes we are wrong on purpose. Often, as Reverend Jennifer explored a couple Sundays ago, we don't mean it, and yet things break and hurt comes all the same. And what I know about this personal list of wrongs is that it is not so different than the first list I started with, the being wrong about the vaccine or about climate change. That is, that we are so quick, especially in the stress of this time, and our tendency towards fast thinking. We are so quick to decide that we are not the ones who are wrong. It is the other person who needs to apologize. But if being wrong feels exactly the same as being right, then it is possible that when we talk about repairing relationships, the conversation must start here. The conversation must start with ourselves. This is what Andy Stanley also asserts. He says that the first step of relationship repair is when we make an honest inventory of what we have done wrong. Even if you think you've done nothing wrong, that the other person is entirely at fault, probably especially then. Because in almost all cases, there is something there for you to learn and to accept, to grow through, and to repair. It just requires going past our hot takes and past the affirming ways that our friends tell us that we're right, the other person is totally wrong. It takes a deliberate and effortful and slow personal inventory where we grow our imaginations beyond the narrow sense that we know all there is to know, including about ourselves, where we invite in complexity and contradictions and the possibilities that we have acted in ways that don't fit who we think we are. The human capacity for self-deceit is profound. Not just because of our fast thinking, but also because we want to protect our self-identity as good people. Shame shields us from seeing the truth and keeps us from revealing that truth to others. It's one reason that we need to disband notions of good or bad people and instead acknowledge that all of us are capable of actions that harm and actions that hurt. Not just capable, we all cause harm. We all cause harm, all of us. So, in the midst of this slow and deliberate personal inventory, Andy Stanley invites us to just turn to prayer. A prayer that our hearts will be opened to the harm that we have caused. The part that is ours, not more than our part, just ours. A prayer to know the ways that we are wrong, that we have wronged another. Our culture teaches us to do the opposite, that is to shift blame, to save face. We learn to talk about wrong in the passive voice without the first person pronoun. Instead of saying something, I missed the mark, we learn to say, the mark was missed. Now, I want to say here again what Elaine said last week, which is that this idea does not apply to all relationships or circumstances. I mean, abuse should never be tolerated or accommodated. I mean only to speak of the regular, everyday ways that we fail each other. To invite us to find in these places a simple prayer. Something like, universe, open my heart to the ways that I am wrong. Or, love, guide me to see my part. Or, God, help me to accept my piece. For a while, you might scorn the prayer as soon as you say it. That's okay. Say it anyway. If you want to repair what has gone off course, say it anyway. Trust that at some point in the prayer, something will shift. You will see and feel something in yourself that expands your imagination, even if it's just a willingness to listen differently to the other person, to attempt to see things from their perspective and to enter their world even a little. So over the next few minutes, I want to practice this together. I invite you to call to mind a relationship situation where you have been mostly sure that it's the other person that needs to apologize, the other person that is wrong. It doesn't have to be a giant issue. It could be very small, but it could be a bigger one. Whatever just surfaces for you in the next couple of minutes. We're going to listen to this song and its mantra. The mantra is open my heart. And during this time, orient yourself towards this prayer of your part, the ways you're wrong. After the song, it'll go right into a poem that will help us deepen in this reflection. And so let us pray together. Spirit of life, open my heart to the ways that I am wrong and guide me towards the ways of love.